Hi everybody, so I'm a 15-year-old and I have Charcot-Marie Tooth disease. For those who don't know, it's a neurological disorder and I inherited it from my mother's side. I was diagnosed 2 years ago and since then, during my flare-ups, I have to use a wheelchair. And even otherwise, if I have to travel long distances, I have to use my wheelchair. But I can walk, for the most part, or at least I try. My mother also had the same disease, and throughout her life she had to use a wheelchair just like I do. For her, it was kind of worse because her body would just give up randomly, so she had to use the wheelchair a lot more than I did. Towards the end, she was completely restricted to her bed until the day of her demise. She passed away when I was 10 years old after a long battle with breast cancer. So naturally, she had it pretty bad, and it was really traumatizing for both me and my father to deal with that kind of thing. And I don't think that we ever have or ever will get over that kind of loss. She meant the world to us, and even today we feel her loss very deeply. I don't think there is anything unhealthy about it or whatever. I think it's completely natural for both me and my father to feel this way because my mom was my dad's high school sweetheart and first love. So naturally, it's not like he's going to move on completely and forget about her existence no matter what happens. I think it's just normal. But for whatever reason, my stepmom, let's call her Katie, doesn't feel the same way. She and my dad have been together for the past 2 years and recently they got married. I have never liked her. I don't think that I can ever bring myself to like her because she's always been very holier than thou. Right from the beginning, I got a very weird vibe from her. But her kids were nice. My step-siblings are both older than me. Gina is 19 and Reggie is 21, and they're both very sweet and are very accommodating around me as well. I only see them on the weekends since they are with their dad for the rest of the week. But I've never spoken to them about their mom because I know that at the end of the day, Katie is still their mother and I didn't want to risk it. However, I guess they always felt the same way, that Katie was a little too overbearing and controlling around me and my dad, and it just didn't make sense. My dad introduced me to Katie around 6 months after they started dating, and I was fine with it because it had been a while since my mom had passed away, and I knew that it would be unreasonable for me to expect him to never move on with his life. I was mentally prepared for that, but Katie was just really weird. In the beginning itself, she started giving me advice as if she was my mom, and she wanted me to do exactly whatever she told me to, whether it was academically or about my personal life. Then, about 6 months later, she moved in with us, and since then, she's been insufferable. For the past year, she's been living with us, and she has made so many changes to our home that I don't even recognize it anymore. She completely renovated everything. She put away everything that my mother had bought with love to decorate the house. And she didn't even want to let us keep the pictures on the wall with my mom in it, but that was where my dad put his foot down. She insisted that it would be better for both of us to put away anything that reminded us of her, so that we would be able to move on with our lives faster. And we would be able to heal from everything that had happened. But I don't think that that was the way to do it, and we didn't need that kind of extreme measure. My dad did not seem to be fine with it, and neither was I. So she eventually had to give up on that, but in spite of it, it's never stopped her from trying to get us to forget about my mom. She doesn't let us talk about her. She always tries to steer the conversation in some other direction whenever she comes up on her birth and death anniversary. She tries to act extra happy instead of doing the appropriate thing and letting us grieve in peace. I have just found it very disrespectful and I have never liked her because of this. But my dad somehow put up with it and he seems happy with her otherwise, so I don't say anything about it. And of course, in addition to this, like I said, she always tries to be my mom, even though I don't think of her that way, and she always tries extra hard to boss me around. In fact, many times she has even told me that I am only dependent on my wheelchair because I think that I need it. But if I just get over it in my own head, then I won't need it anymore. As if I have self-diagnosed myself with this neurological disorder and I'm just making stuff up to get sympathy or something. I don't like it at all. So for the most part, I keep my distance from her. But then recently, she and my dad got married and now she's a permanent part of our lives. And I've had to deal with that as well. They had been engaged for 6 months and 3 weeks ago, she got married to my father and I thought that I would just have to deal with her in the same way now. But I didn't expect her to get worse. Last weekend, Gina and Reggie had come over and my dad had not been at home for the weekend because he had some urgent business to attend to, so he had to fly out. I had been sitting on the couch talking to them, but then I needed to go to my room for something. I don't remember what now. All I remember is I felt like I needed my wheelchair, and usually it's always at hand, and just a few steps away or close enough for somebody else to bring it to me. My point is, it's always close to me and accessible, but at that point in time, I couldn't see it anywhere. That was really weird, and I even asked Gina and Reggie to help me out, and they looked all over the room, all over the house, but they couldn't find it either. And I was in no position to get up and look for it myself. I was very confused about what was going on, and I genuinely had no clue until I remembered that maybe Katie had something to do with this. She was in the garden and I didn't want to accuse her of anything, not without any evidence at least, because that would only lead to the situation escalating. But even then I had a hunch that maybe she had something to do with it, so I requested Gina to call her inside and ask her. Within a few seconds, Katie was inside and she made no bones about it. She immediately told me that she was the one who removed my wheelchair from the house. And she was not going to tell us where it was. And why was she not going to tell us? Well, of course, it was because she thought that I was acting. And there was nothing wrong with me, and I was only being an attention seeker. And that I apparently acted this way and faked this illness because I wanted my father's sympathy and attention, just like my mom. I'm not even joking. She said that right to my face. And she told me that she was not going to take this kind of crap anymore, and she was going to show it to everyone what a fake and pathetic excuse of a person I was. Everybody in the room was surprised. I was too shocked to say anything, and it was actually Gina and Reggie who took a stand for me and told their mother to take whatever she had said and give me my wheelchair. But she refused. She told them that she was not going to do anything of the sort, and if they had a problem with it, then they could leave. But she had made up her mind, and she was going to force me to reveal the truth today, something that she had been sure of for quite a while. She seemed very adamant, and after a while, I was so shocked and upset, I started crying. Then she started yelling at me, saying that my crocodile tears were not going to move her. She knew what I was up to. I was literally feeling so helpless. I had to request Reggie to carry me to my room, and thankfully he did that. Once I was in my room, I told him to not let his mother bother me anymore, and he promised me that he would make sure of it. And I'm really lucky that I have such nice and good step-siblings. Anyway, thanks to them, I was able to make a phone call to my father in peace, and I explained everything to him, and even though he didn't say anything on the phone, he was back home on the next flight, and even though he came back home pretty late, like around 10 in the night, which was a good few hours after the whole incident, at least he came back that day itself, because in his absence, things had gotten really out of hand. And there had been a huge shouting match that I wasn't a part of between Katie and her children because they were on my side and she thought that they were being ungrateful and annoying and they couldn't see me for what I was, which is why they were falling for my little act. That had gone on for quite a while until Katie finally decided to lock herself in my parents' bedroom, and she didn't come out until my dad came back home and demanded that she speak to him. When he came back, there was another round of yelling and shouting, but thankfully that only took place after my dad had already checked up on me, and he had managed to find my spare wheelchair, which I had forgotten about. But even then I chose to stay in my room, and about an hour later I heard the door of the living room slam, and then there was silence. I was very confused as to what was going on, but then my dad, Gina, and Reggie, all of them came up to my room and told them that Gina and Reggie had backed me up about whatever I had told him already, and they had even gone to the extent of explaining further. They had told her about her past, which I will get into later because I don't think it's relevant right now. And my dad had asked Katie to leave, and he was planning on filing for a divorce. Now, I don't know what to say, but I've been feeling very guilty about it because I feel like I've robbed my dad of one chance of being happy without my mom, even though I know for a fact that this is not actually my fault. Katie could have avoided all of this if she had acted stable, but she didn't. She was unhinged and weird. And I know that this is her fault, but again, I can't help but feel sorry for my father. And I feel like I owe it to him to tell him that maybe he should give his marriage another try. Maybe I should tell him that he should opt for marriage counseling, and we could, as a family, get therapy, and maybe that would fix things. Because I knew that apart from the whole situation with me, he really liked Katie, and he really wanted to be with her, and their marriage has been very short-lived. I hate her. I really do. But I also love my dad, and I want him to be happy, so I'm in a very weird place right now. Do you guys think that it's my fault, AITA, for complaining to my dad about my stepmom's shenanigans? Edit. Okay, so I'm sorry I forgot to mention this in my original post, even after I said I would, but here it is. What Reggie and Gina had said about Katie's past. They had basically said that she had had a whole lot of mental issues in the past, and she had claimed after a visit to the psychiatrist that she had been diagnosed with BPD, bipolar disorder. But that turned out to be a lie. She used to fight a lot with her ex-husband, their father, and she used to act very unhinged whenever she fought with him. And she used to throw stuff around, screaming in his face. Sometimes she would even shove him. He took it for a long time. He stayed in that marriage for the sake of his children, but after that, he couldn't take it anymore, and he eventually decided to leave. He also filed for full custody of both Reggie and Gina when he decided to leave. And in fact, for the first 6 months after their divorce, she was only allowed to have supervised visits because the court had ruled against her. Eventually, she managed to undergo a lot of counseling, and when it was proven that she was stable enough to handle herself around the kids, only then did she get shared custody. And since then, for the past 4 or maybe 5 years, her kids have been visiting her, and even that has to do with the fact that they are much older. So anyway, the point is she's always had issues, but they've never spoken about it publicly because they thought that she had moved on from that, but clearly not. This was what we found out from them, and I have to say it makes sense. She never brought any of this up with my father, though. She never told him any of it, and she had only said that she had lost custody of her children in the beginning of her divorce because her ex-husband was rich and could afford to get the best lawyers who made her look like the bad guy very efficiently. Clearly, they didn't have to put in a lot of effort. She did all the work herself. Update 1. Hey everyone, thank you so much for all the support. It really means the world to me, and it has convinced me that I am doing the right thing right now. Also, that I'm not really the one to blame here. As a lot of you guys had suggested, I discussed everything that I had been feeling with my dad, because I think that is the only way to get through all of this. He is the person that I needed to speak to right from the beginning, but I had been avoiding it for God knows what reason. I guess in the beginning I thought that I might end up ruining stuff for him, and he would resent me a little or something like that, which is why I was keeping all the feelings to myself. But now I think that was a very foolish thing for me to do, because at the end of the day, he is my father. Who am I supposed to talk to if not him? He's my only surviving parent. And he said the same thing too, that no matter how I feel, I'm supposed to come and tell him and be honest with him about whatever I feel, even if I think that's going to hurt him. In fact, he even said that I'm supposed to tell him whatever I feel, especially if I think it's going to hurt him, because communication is the only way that we will be able to be a happy family. And he doesn't ever want to make me feel like I'm alone because he always has my back. This is what he told me, and that really reassured me that I'm not the one stirring up trouble in his life. But unfortunately, that doesn't make me feel any better about the situation with Katie, because I knew that he really liked her. And I can tell he's a bit upset about it now, but he's trying his best to cover it up and act extra cheerful around me, so I don't feel bad about it. I can't help it though. I just wish that Katie had been a good person and that none of this would have happened. I don't know what her problem was with me. I don't know why she had to go on such a power trip. It just ruined everything, and most of all, it was so foolish that it ended up affecting her the worst out of all of us. From what I know, she's still trying to get in touch with my dad. But he has been avoiding her phone calls and messages, and I know that because sometimes I see his phone and he just chooses not to even look at it, and then he switches it off later and both of us pretend not to notice, but we know what's going on. I don't know how or when this is going to get better, but I'm just hoping that things go back to normal as quickly as possible, because this has made me feel really uneasy, and I don't like it at all because it's making my dad miserable. I don't want that for him. I don't want that for our family, so I really hope that this comes to an end quickly. Update 2. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since my last update, and a few hours ago, Katie showed up at our house and she was furious. My dad and I were at home. We were watching television, having dinner, and then all of a sudden there was just loud banging on the door, a lot of screaming and shouting, and it really took us by surprise. For a few seconds I couldn't figure out what was going on, and I was really stunned. My dad was also shocked. But then he pulled himself together, and from the voice screaming, we could tell that it was Katie outside. For a while, he didn't do anything. He just stood near the door and made sure that it was locked. It's a pretty solid door, and Katie's not that strong or big, so there was no fear of her breaking it down. But even then, it was a really weird thing for her to be doing. Anyway, he stood there, and after she seemed to calm down a bit, he told her that he was not going to open the door to her, especially after what she had done right now, and he didn't want her to speak to him or me. He just wanted her to leave because things were over now. There was no point in discussing anything anymore. She responded that she was not going to go anywhere and that she was definitely not going to sign any divorce papers because that was not happening, and they were going to go to counseling and fix everything instead of letting go of each other. Because she knew that they were perfect together and she was not going to allow him to ruin anything just because of me. That's when I realized that my father had already filed for divorce, and she had probably been served that day, and clearly she hadn't taken it well. Anyway, then my dad told her that whether she liked it or not, he had already filed for divorce and he was not going to cancel the proceedings. He was going to go through with it. And they were going to separate because clearly she was not capable of being a decent stepmother to me. And that's pretty non-negotiable for him. And he had made that clear to her right in the beginning itself. So if she's not up for that, she has no business being in our home, because let alone being a good step-parent, she couldn't even be a good friend to me. After my dad said that, Katie decided to start crying as loudly as she possibly could, right outside our door. And she started accusing me of everything that had gone wrong. She started saying I was responsible for all of this, that I was the one who did not want my father to be happy because I still miss my mom, and that I'm only trying to prevent him from replacing her, which is why I don't want her in our house and in our lives, and that I had had it in her right from the beginning. I don't know why she was saying all of these things. It was clearly not true, and obviously it was not going to make my dad change his mind. If anything, it was going to make it even worse for her. Even if she really believed all of these things to be true, which I can hardly think any person in their right mind would be able to believe, but let's just say that she was delusional enough to think that the things that she was saying were actually true. Why would she say it out loud, knowing that it was going to hurt her case with my father even more? It was really stupid of her to do that. My father got very upset with all the nonsense she was saying. So he decided to tell her he had had it, and that she really had to leave because otherwise he would be forced to call the cops, and he really did not want to do that. Since then, things would get very ugly. She didn't respond to that. She just went on crying, and she kept saying that it was all my fault, that she really loved my father, and she didn't want to leave him, and that he couldn't be doing this to her for real. And for a couple of minutes my dad was very disturbed. He didn't know what to say, but then again he told her he was going to call the cops now. And at that point, I guess she decided she had had enough. And without another word, she left. We heard her car drive away, but even then we didn't open the door to check for another 15 minutes. Thankfully, when we finally did check, she was gone. And even though it's been a few hours since then, I've been really shaken up since. Obviously, my dad has been a huge source of comfort, but I just feel really bad about whatever happened. I can't say that I take pleasure in any of this. Even the fact that Katie's miserable right now, because I don't want anybody to be unhappy because of me. I'm not trying to be a goody two-shoes or anything, but that's the truth. I just hope she leaves us alone now because this was bad enough. Update 3. Hi, it's been a couple of weeks since my last update and the divorce proceedings have started. They are in the mediation stage of it right now, and of course it's a contested divorce. I'm assuming that it's going to take a long time because I don't think that Katie is the kind of person who's going to accept this defeat easily. In the past few weeks, things have been pretty intense between my dad and Katie. She has shown up a couple of times to beg him to take her back, and each time he has refused. They have had very long discussions in the living room when she has bothered to be civil, and if she tries to fight with him, he just kicks her out. I mostly stay away from all of that because I don't have any inclination to speak to her or see her, because I know that she doesn't like me, and that's the reason they're getting divorced. So naturally, she would probably not prefer for me to be around, so I stay away since I don't want to be around her either. Most of the time, when she has showed up in these few weeks, she comes back on the pretext of collecting the things that she has left behind. And my dad had even told her that she was free to come by any time and take all her things at once, but she hasn't done that yet. Probably so that she still has some excuse to keep coming back, so she can see my dad and talk to him somehow. It was exhausting. But now that the divorce has started, I don't see how she's going to still manage to come by and try to change his mind. My dad and I are not discussing the divorce because he has made it very clear to me that he wants me to focus on my education and my health, and not concern myself with any of this because he already knows that this has affected my mental health quite a bit, and he doesn't want me to worry about it even more. So I keep asking him, but he doesn't really go into the details, which is why I can't elaborate on it. All he tells me is that it's going to be okay enough, and I don't need to worry about anything, so I guess that's good enough for me. Also, since a lot of you wanted to know, let me just tell you guys, I have still kept in touch with Katie's kids because they didn't know anything was wrong. And in fact, they have been very helpful, and we are good friends now. I don't care about their mom. And in fact, even they're not speaking to her right now, and she doesn't seem to care much about it either because she hasn't bothered reaching out to them. So I guess it's all worked out well for everyone involved. If anything more happens, I'll keep you guys in the loop and let you know. Again, thank you so much to everybody who has reached out to me, be it in the comments or in my inbox. I'm very grateful for the support. Update 4. Hi everybody. So it has been 9 months since the divorce proceedings started, and it has felt very long for all of us involved. But last week my dad's divorce finally came through, and he couldn't be happier about it. He's still in a very celebratory mood, and so am I, because this is finally over and she is out of our life. He seems pretty happy about the fact that he was able to get out of this without coughing up any alimony. And I'm pretty glad about that as well. She has been fighting for a long time. She had been getting more vicious and desperate. And I guess eventually that was her undoing, because it's not like the family court and the judge are blind. It was pretty obvious what she was trying to do, and I was confident that my dad and his lawyer would be able to put it across. She had a pretty good lawyer too, I'll have to give her that, because otherwise she wouldn't have been able to drag this out for so long in less capable hands. That doesn't matter anymore. The point is, we are done and dusted for good. She hasn't bothered us in person for quite some time, and I don't think that she will be doing that anymore. She also hasn't spoken to her kids in a very long time, so I don't know what she's going to do about that. But I don't think that they care. We are still on speaking terms. We are good friends, and we're going to keep it that way. My dad and I are quite happy. So thank you to everybody who has bothered to check in. It is very sweet of you guys, so thank you. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.